Welcome to Moving Conversations, a podcast for movement professionals by movement professionals. If you coach, train, or teach movement, Pilates, or fitness, then this podcast is for you. With more than 60 years of experience in fitness and Pilates, your hosts, Brian Ritchie and Nora St. John, explore the science of human movement, diving deep into the facts, myths, and common misconceptions, hoping to spark thought and conversation about how we view fitness and movement. Now, let's jump into Moving Conversations. And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. It is so good to finally see you again.
For those who don't know, Brian and I have both been between traveling and teaching. We have been off of our usual like once or twice a week rhythm. So yeah, it's great to see you too, Brian.
Yeah,
Here we are, and it's like almost the end of summer.
It was so weird. We taught together for a week and then saw each other literally. Couldn't make this up at the airport. I'm coming back from Korea. She's going to Korea. Her flight lands. Mine's about to board. She walks over to my gate. It's like, hey, we talk for about 5 or 10 minutes. Then I get on a plane. And then the next day she's going to Korea. So, I mean, it's been a whirlwind for both of us, but things are going to calm down for the next few days at least. Then I'm back to Asia to go to Japan for 10 days to teach. But after that, I think things are going to calm down just a little bit, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I think we're back on a pretty regular schedule through the end of the year. I mean, we'll certainly
give or take.
Not be traveling as much. Yeah, traveling, but not like for weeks on end.
Yeah. But I had to remind myself, I went through our list of things to speak on, and I know we haven't finished our 4-part conversation on the knee. So today, let's finish that up. Let's hit part 4, where we're going to talk about chondromalasia, patella femoral syndrome, and the overarching sort of theme of knee tracking issues.
Yep. Sounds good.
So that's what we're going to be doing today. As always, I'm going to ask you guys, please do us a favor, hit the like and subscribe button. However you're listening to us, whether it's on Spotify or iHeartRadio, Apple Music, whatever it is, hit that like and subscribe. That way it's in your feed every week. You don't have to worry about it. Downloads automatically. We're also on YouTube. You can check out my channel, Brian Ritchie, where all of these are posted so you can actually see our pleasant, lovely faces sort of talking to you. And if we describe something, we gesticulate with our hands quite often. So that's always another place for us to be seen. Exactly. And for our friends in other parts of the world that we're meeting all the time, it's great that they can sort of watch with some translation. So yeah, those are the ways to get in touch with us, or you can always email us, movingconvos@gmail.com, or on Instagram, Moving Convos on Instagram is best ways to get in touch with us. All right.
Also, guys, we're on season 2, just so y'all know, and we've got about 60 episodes we've already done. So if there's a topic that you're interested in that you don't see in the current feed, just go back, like if it's of interest, because I know our leadership is going up every week. And if there's something like, low back pain or shoulders or tendonitis or something, we've covered a lot of those topics. So just take a look back through our catalog and there might be something of interest to you there as well. Yeah. So keep an eye on not just the present, but the past as well.
Yep. Feel free to go back. And also, if you have a topic that you would like us to cover again or do a deeper dive on, you can let us know. Or if there's something we haven't talked about. I remember scoliosis was something that we got quite a few people asking about, and we brought in an expert in the field. And that was one of, a huge topic that we dove deep in with her on, and it was fantastic and it was well received. So if there's something you're interested in, let us know. That way we can, if we're not the people to bring it to you, we can reach out to our friends, someone that we know who's an expert in the field, and we can bring you the current information.
Yep. We love to do it.
Yeah. And that way we learn too. It's always great when we have people, was it last week, I think, or the week before, we had Nico on, and it was fantastic learning, about him, Pocket Pilates, and having that conversation. So every time we bring on a guest, it's fantastic. And we've got some really cool ones coming up in the future. So stay tuned for more on that. But let's dive into the knee a little bit more.
Okay. Back into the knee.
Yeah.
So we've talked about ACLs. We've talked about general kind of knee ways to manage and stabilize the knee. The last little piece we wanted to talk about was knee tracking, and particularly specifically how the patella, the kneecap, tracks in the femoral condyles, in the femoral
Yep.
groove. So this is a very common source of pain and discomfort when there isn't good tracking there. And there is a couple of really honestly pretty simple tips and tricks that can
Mhm.
help you to manage that tracking better and oftentimes decrease knee pain with a minimum of effort on your part or your client's part.
Yeah, a lot of what we've talked about so far with the meniscus and the ACL are more things that involve sort of the medical industry. I mean, they may or may not have had surgery or whatnot, but there's actually a medical condition. In this instance, a lot of times when we're talking about knee tracking issues, it's musculoskeletal, it's
Yeah.
muscular imbalances.
Yep.
So this is something that you're probably going to come up against in your own studio
Mhm.
or at the gym more often than you would necessarily a meniscal tear or an ACL just because it's so common.
It's so common, and so the idea here is that if that patella is tracking straight, relatively straight in that groove, that puts minimum stress between the patella and the groove that it's going through. Yeah. If you don't, and this is really a myofascial imbalance. So
Mhm.
if you're typically the vastus medialis, our lateral quadricep muscle, is a little bit dominant over our medial vastus medialis, then that patella will typically track laterally, so towards the outside of the knee, and that's super common, and oftentimes a source of just kind of that icky, my knee hurts when I get up in the morning, when I move around a little bit, it hurts after I walk too much, after I bicycle too much, and it's really just a wear and tear tracking issue.
And you can see this on yourself. I mean, I ask you
Mhm.
to do it right now. Just sit on the edge of your chair. If you're driving, do not do this. Do not do this if you're driving. Wait until you get to work. However, for those of you sitting in a chair or are taking a walk or something, find some place to sit, straighten the leg out in front of you, and take a look at your knee. I want you to feel your kneecap, see how mobile it is. Can it move around? Some people's are pretty tight in the joint and it doesn't want to move, but see
Mhm.
how mobile it is first. Then tighten up your quadricep and watch how that patella moves. Does it move straight up or does it sort of veer out to the side? In all my years, I've only seen one person that it's actually tracked medially. Everyone
Yeah,
else I've always seen lateral.
yeah,
So either it's going to be straight or it's going to be somewhat going out to the side. And that can be a potential reason why you may have knee pain or discomfort. It doesn't always mean that though, because I've known a number of people who have no knee issues whatsoever, but they've got a little bit of lateral tracking. And it's just something to sort of, as a trainer, I see it. I'm like, okay, it's going to be in the back of my mind, sort of the recesses of my mind that, if they ever mention it, that could be a potential reason why, but I'm going to do some preventative things immediately just so I can shore that up so it doesn't become an issue.
exactly. Well, couple things about that when I think about the clients I know who have these tracking issues. One is if they're a little bit knock-kneed, that'll be more common just because of how
Mhm.
the angle of the quadricep goes down into the knee.
Yep.
Also, having again, I know I bring this up a lot, but having worked with an awful lot of dancers over the years, you spend a lot of time in lateral rotation. They can be super strong in their legs, but they often have lateral tracking. So when that whole lateral chain from the external rotators through the side of the leg is dominant because somebody does a lot of work in lateral rotation, it seems to be more common in my experience that they're lacking that straight tracking of the patella. They'll track a little more laterally just because of that muscular dominance on the lateral leg.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, this always comes up. Uh, I've probably told the story before, but when I was in Hawaii, I worked with a lot of marathon runners, and we would see a
Mm,
lot of tracking issues
yeah.
because people would go from 0 to immediately training and running miles upon miles upon miles a week,
Yeah.
and then they would start having knee problems. Go
Oddly
figure.
enough.
Going from 0 to 100, it's
0
gonna
to
happen.
100. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. And, and just getting them to work the muscles right, getting them to start firing the vastus medialis a little bit more, getting them to do some release work on the lateral quad and the IT band, both of them, and strengthening the hip, which we talked about a lot in our knee stability episode. Uh, those go hand in hand. And all of a sudden, within a week or two, it's like, oh, wow, this feels a whole lot better. And it makes me look like a miracle worker, but really I'm just gently coaxing that kneecap, that patella back toward the midline. And sometimes all it takes is a millimeter or two. It doesn't need a ton.
No.
We're just trying to coax it back a little bit.
It doesn't need to be perfected. It just needs to be even slightly improved. So Brian mentioned the key elements there, one of which is releasing the lateral leg. So
Yep.
all of your rolling on the side of the leg or manual release or whatever you're going to do, really from the hip, I oftentimes, from the external rotators all the way down through the lateral leg, IT band and vastus lateralis, to your point, and then strengthening the vastus medialis. Now, Brian and I, we've had some discussions about this.
No. See, you think that I'm against internal rotation. I'm not.
Not that. Okay, so this brings up a moment of not controversy, but thinking about this, okay? So whenever you read anything in the literature about how do you strengthen the vastus medialis, okay, that medial knee, and especially what's called the vastus medialis obliquus, or VMO, which is the oblique fibers of the vastus medialis, these little diagonal fibers there that help to track that patella more medially. It says you must do terminal knee extension. Like that is the universal thing. And that's true for sure. Don't get me wrong on that. But when I was working on this, it's like you can do terminal knee extension and not fire the VMO.
Absolutely.
It's not automatic. And that's part of the challenge with this, is that I found with a lot of my clients with more or less, more chronic knee pain, that muscle doesn't fire at all. Like literally, if I put my finger in the belly of that medialis, so just, right kind of towards the inside corner of my knee, it's nothing's happening. I contract my quad and it's like mush. So working with, clients over the years, it's like, well, what's the trick? Like, how do I get somebody's to fire? And what occurred to me was thinking about who has the best vastus medialises. And thinking about all the activities and all the people that I've worked with the different sports, but cyclists, basically. Serious cyclists have like these called the teardrop muscle, right? That little medial quad that's like a nice big ball right there. And I thought, okay, what about that is specific? Like what are they training? Why do they have that muscle? Why does it get developed in that sport? And this is where our, Brian and I's critical thinking comes into play. Like, what is happening and how can I reproduce that? And so I'm thinking cyclists, number one, are closed chain relatively, because they're typically clipped into their pedals. So there's closed chain action happening rather than open chain version. And number two, they tend to be slightly internally rotated and adducted. Especially a serious cyclist is going to try to make as narrow a wind tunnel, basically, or as narrow a silhouette as possible. I'm like, okay, so the tricks there are closed chain and slightly medially rotated. And it's also, and this was what was interesting to me, is it's not actual terminal knee extension. A cyclist doesn't usually go all the way to a straight leg. They go close to it. Right. They're certainly straightening the leg, but they never go all the way straight.
They don't lock out.
No, if your bike's set up right, you're not going to lock out, because that's not how you get your power. So that was the other thing, is it's like it's up too close to terminal knee extension, but not actual terminal knee extension.
Right.
So based on all that, I was like, okay, well, let's see how we can make this a little more effective. And sometimes a little bit of medial rotation, a little bit of adduction, so maybe squeezing something between the thighs or something, can also help to activate that vastus medialis.
And I found that has played in key roles, getting the adductors to fire 100%, always. Now, the reason why terminal knee extension has always been looked at is that last 30 degrees is really when the vastus medialis fires the strongest in the range of motion. It doesn't fire nearly as strong when your knee is at 90 as it does when your knee is approaching extension. So that's the reason why it was sort of looked upon as we need to do that terminal knee extension, because that's when it fires the most. And it's true, it does. But there are other components, as you said, getting the adductors to fire. Huge Huge. If you can do that at the same time, which, let's face it, works better in closed chain than it does in open chain. So if
Yeah,
I'm doing
absolutely.
something that we call short arc quads, which is basically a seated leg extension when you're sitting on the edge of a table, or your legs over a foam roller or something, and you're really doing that last 30 to 40 degrees range of motion, well, that's open chain. Your leg is floating out in space.
Right.
So it's hard to get your adductors firing as strongly in that position as you can when you're in closed chain, because you can actually push against the ground. You can push against something. You have a little bit more of that tactile experience through the foot as well as through the leg, that you can get a little bit more of those adductor fibers to fire with the vastus medialis.
And just to bring this back to what we're talking about in terms of knee stability, we focused an awful lot on the abductors, which are
Yep.
really important. Like, don't get me wrong on that. But this brings in that medial side of the knee, or that medial side of the thigh, really looking at not just the adductors, but I would also say sometimes I'll also work on the medial hamstring a bit
Mm-hmm.
as well, because for not everybody, but a lot of people are weak on both sides of their
Yeah.
lateral leg. That are both sides of the lateral system, both the medial and the lateral leg can be on the weaker side for a lot of people.
Well, we talked about this before. We're very sagittal when we go to the gym,
Well, we're
whether you're
very
doing
sagittal in life.
in
Also,
general. Yeah, we
I
go
mean,
forward and back.
right? We
How
don't
often do
go
we walk
side to side so
sideways?
much.
But because we don't move side to side, and even rotation, you don't see people train that as much unless they're very conscious of it. People
Yeah.
have a tendency to squat, lunge, and do a lot of things front to back.
Yep.
So they don't think about that adductor group unless it's something specific. And let's face it, for years, it was just that machine in the gym where you squeezed your legs together, which was open chain and really didn't do a whole lot. Did it tone the muscle? Well, yeah, a little bit, but it really didn't do anything functionally for us. So to actually train that muscle, we have to put some thought into it. And we really have to sort of figure out, okay, how do we want to train this? How do we want to add that to be part of our exercise component?
And to take a Pilates view on this, so one of the things that um, I mention a lot, and I work with a lot when I'm training my Pilates clients and my Pilates instructors, is to think about abduction and adduction in a closed chain way.
Mhm.
That open chain, like side leg lifts in Pilates, right? Lying on your side, lifting a leg up, very typical exercise, is designed in theory to really work on the abductors. And yes, it does to some extent, but I find that again, closed chain work is way more effective. So even just standing on one leg and
Mhm.
swinging the other leg will get the abductors firing on that standing leg. And the adductors are similar. They really do work, I think, work best when they're trained in a closed chain fashion. So again, in Pilates environment, that might be doing your footwork with something between the knees. So you've got a little bit of that squeeze, like
Mhm.
the magic circle or the ring or a block or whatever, and then things like feet in straps, where you have gravity, right, fighting against adduction, essentially, if you're taking your legs out, bringing them back in. Those are ways to think about semi-closed chain because your feet in straps. And then there's all the standing leg work on the reformer too, which is really nice way to get closed chain abduction and adduction. So just bringing those pieces in.
And something that, because you and I talked about the knee stability, a little bit ago, I was trying to think about that because I do teach the 7-way hip, my side lying routine and whatnot. And it dawned on me as I was teaching it that for me, I break it down this way. The side lying stuff is great for hip stability work when you're trying to
Mm.
teach hip stability in an open chain environment, but for pure strengthening, closed chain is the way to go. So for me, I activate the muscle lying on their side. I get them to be stable so that they can move it separate from the spine so that they're really trying to
Yeah.
move the muscles that we want to firing
Yep.
and
Yep.
move, the hip joint. Then when I take them into a standing position, I find that those muscles are already woken up and now I can really strengthen them, whether it be abduction or adduction. So standing closed chain by far superior for actually gaining strength.
So I think that's a good point. I just want to dive in a little bit more to that.
Yeah,
So let's say you're doing that side leg lift, right? Or your 7-way hip, depending
mhm,
which environment you're in. One of the
absolutely.
things that we both see certainly is that a lot of times if somebody's just lying on their side and they're lifting their leg, they're actually not always abducting at the hip joint. They're often just shortening the waist. They're lifting the whole hip up. And if you look at them, you'll realize this is a little silly, but I always say you want to crease at what I call the granny panty line, not the thong line. So I want to really see that there's a crease where the femur meets the pelvis, not up at the waist. And if I'm not seeing that, if that's staying really straight, then I typically know that they're not really abducting at the hip joint itself and not activating the abductors. They're working more on the QL and kind of the other muscles that lift the hip. So that's one of those real fine points that's important if you're going to do some of that side lying leg work.
It's incredibly important. If you don't have them doing it properly, like you said, it becomes a waste exercise. And there's a lot better exercises to do than that. You know, if you're if you want to do QL, we can do quadratus lumborum till the cows come home in a lot of other ways. But for us to really focus on hip stability, it can be done side lying. It can be done, but usually a smaller range of motion. I usually try and limit their range of motion. Like you said, creasing right where the femur, ends, right at the greater trochanter, where it sits into the hip joint, creasing there and focusing in that area. And what you're going to find is that the client will feel it a lot more there. They'll feel it more in their hip. And then after it's woken up, when you try and do another exercise, when they are standing on it, either one-legged standing, sidestepping, or on the reformer, all of that, suddenly they feel it more. It's like, oh my gosh, yeah, I can really feel this. And because you've trained them in thinking about how to crease from that hip, when they are doing something where they're doing standing abduction, they know where they're supposed to be moving from.
One simple trick I sometimes use on that is, let's say you just have your client stand up, or you guys can stand up out there in the audience. If you're not driving, and from there, trouble ensues. And if you're standing with the legs a little bit wide and you're just shifting your weight from hip to hip, right? Just shift your weight to the right foot, shift your weight to the left foot, and you'll feel that shift of the hips that will create that crease where we want it to be. So a lot of times with clients, when they're having that moment of like, what are you talking about? I'll just have them stand up. We just shift side to side and put their fingers right in that crease. That's what I'm looking for. That can help them to identify it. So then when they do lie down, they know kind of what they're looking for. So that's a simple little trick that I use to get them to understand what that means to crease at the hip, not the waist.
And in gym speak, this is really important if you're trying to teach someone to do like a side lunge. Because a lot of times when someone tries to do a side lunge, even if their feet are already wide and they're just bending one knee, they may be sitting back in their hips, but if they're not creasing in the right area, their pelvis is actually twisted a little bit. And they're not really getting the adductors the way that you think they are. So sometimes I'll literally take my hand like a karate chop and put it right there, right at where that crease is, and say, here, crease from here. Bend from here. And as soon as they do that, they're, oh my gosh, they immediately, you could see the eyes, that acknowledgement. It's, I got this. And suddenly they say, oh yeah, I feel that a lot more in my inner thighs. And for me, that's like, okay, your adductors are now firing. Whereas before they were twisting a little bit or they were rotating. They weren't doing really what I wanted them to do, even though the motion looked similar. They weren't really accomplishing the goal that I wanted. So these are just fine tuning things that can make a huge difference to your client.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. So looking at that, again, getting back to patellar tracking, right? This is all like looking at the details, which is what we do on this podcast a lot. Is looking beyond just the superficial and kind of seeing what are the details of how you do that. So there was a bunch of tips and tricks about getting abductors and adductors to work appropriately to create that stability and to create that balance. Brian, you have a bunch of really, I think, really lovely ways to get that terminal knee extension, and I know you've done some of these, right?
We're going to be posting them. You're going to see them on our Anatominis, Movie Conversations live stuff online. Various ways to create that last 30 degrees in a standing position, because again, we want to do it close chain whenever possible. And I think we demonstrate it with the ring, putting the ring against the wall and putting it behind your knee and then just straightening that out. straightening out the knee, going till it's nearly straight with a little bit of internal rotation in
Yep.
the femur, little bit. Don't go overboard on that though. Okay. Because again,
Mhm.
we want the hip to be working properly. And I don't want to train someone with their
Yeah.
toes tremendously turned in. A little
Yep.
bit is all you need.
Yep. Yep.
You could do it with a band or a super band behind the knee attached to an anchor point and straightening out the leg. And again, all of these we're going to be showing on our Instagram channel this coming week. So you're going to see them live and in person sort of thing. Uh, they're great ways to do it. But what I love is the one that we do on the reformer where you're
Mhm.
just sitting on the foot bar.
Yep. Yeah, so the other version that we do is sitting on the foot bar. And you can have one foot, usually I have one foot on the ground, so it's nice and stable for somebody sitting
Yep.
on the foot bar, and then one foot is on the carriage. And you can weight it as light or as strong as you need to. That's up to you in terms of resistance. But basically, from that bent knee position, I usually start with the heel or right in front of the heel on the edge of the carriage, at the edge of the front edge of the carriage. And I'm going to push back. So I'm going from a bent knee towards terminal knee extension.
Yep.
And the nice thing about that for me, and what I like about the seated position, is I can put my finger and I can actually feel if that muscle's firing.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I mentioned earlier is just because you're straightening your knee does not mean that muscle's firing. And
Mhm.
so if I really want to wake that area up, I've often got to have the client have feedback, their own biofeedback with their finger going, oh, is that muscle firing? Yes, no. And if not, then what do we need to do to get it to fire? Maybe it's a little more medial rotation, change in resistance.
Yep.
Again, I'll start typically with the resistance right in front of the heel, and then I might move up, put it on the ball of the foot. Different people respond differently
Absolutely.
to where that position is on the front edge of the carriage. And basically what I want to do is find the range where I can get that consistently to fire and then work it, right?
Yep.
And work it.
Yep.
This is also an area that I don't want to overdo at all,
Mhm.
but I want to really try to wake that muscle up early in their process. So if they're doing a program, maybe I warm them up a bit. We do some footwork, we do some other things, but I want to get that VMO woken up as soon as possible. So when they
Mhm.
do their footwork, when they do their knee stretch or other kinds of exercises, that's awake and supporting that knee as it's moving through flexion and extension.
Yeah, I call it priming the pump. It's like,
Yeah.
before you start a lawnmower, you got to press that little ball to get gasoline into the engine. It's the same thing. We got to wake things up sometimes, and if we don't wake it up, it doesn't work.
And and a lot of times when Brian and I are talking about that, we're talking about a neurological wake up,
Yeah.
right? That there's just a pattern in our neuromyofascial system or our brain that says, I don't need that, so why should I fire it?
Yep.
Right. And so a lot of times it's not that muscle isn't there, doesn't activate, although sometimes with the VMO that's kind of true. But I just got to wake it up and tell it, yes, it's your job. Come on, buddy. Wake up, you little sleepy guy, and join the party. And once you do that, then you can start to strengthen it. But if it's not activating, then you can do 100 million terminal knee extensions and have no positive effect on that knee tracking.
Well, we both know that there are so many times when other muscles are going to take over,
Yeah.
and they'll
Yep.
do it regularly, either to avoid pain or to make the job easier for the
Yep.
musculature or whatever it is. And we can spot that the movement may not be as efficient as possible and think, something's not working right there. But if it's your own body and you've been doing it for so long, you don't even realize that the vastus medialis is sleeping.
It's
And
automatic. Yeah.
yeah, so we need to do that and be able to get it woken up and say, okay, here we go. Turn it on. So my brain knows, oh, you want me to fire this? I'm with you. And that little flip of a switch can mean everything for the training session that you're about to do.
Yes, exactly. It changes it completely and it makes it effective.
Mhm.
A lot of what moving conversations about is trying to give you those little tips and tricks that just take your training and make it a little more efficient and a little more effective. Because I know Brian and I both talk about this a lot. Our job, as we see it, is to create change, right? To help our
Mhm.
clients move better, feel better, be more comfortable in their bodies, be more efficient in their movement, and more effective in their movement. And
Yep.
these are all, again, designed to be little things you can do that just help your client get better quicker.
Yep. Absolutely. I do want to talk about release work a little bit because there's a
Yep.
lot of controversy about that. And in the
Oh,
future,
yeah.
we will be doing an entire episode on releasing because, oh my gosh, you talk to one person, they'll say one thing, someone else will say something else. Look, I've worked with so many physical therapists. I've been doing this for over 30 years. My opinion is release work does work when there's a specific reason to do it and it's targeted.
Yep.
So, in this sense, there are times when that IT band can become adhered fascially to the quadricep and it's no longer sort of sliding the way it should. Now, granted,
Mhm.
this is an exaggeration, but it should be sliding over the muscle a little bit. We can create fascial adhesions where things aren't moving quite as well as they should, where we find
Mhm.
those little, balls, those hot spots. So I tell people, I want you to release the IT band, but I also want you to release the quadricep and the point between the two. So really, if I'm looking at the top of my quadricep being 12 o'clock and the lateral aspect where the IT band is 3 o'clock, I'm going to aim for 2 o'clock for a lot of it, 2:30 ish,
Yep.
because
Yep.
that's where I find those little adhesions are really binding up. And when they find those hot spots, oh, and when you found one,
It's not subtle.
it's not subtle. And
Uh-uh.
I like using a softer foam roller for a lot of reasons, but a big reason is my clients don't get that upset and they're more likely to do it. So I get adherence to homework by
Mhm.
having them do that so they can be more consistent rather than having them do it on something so painful that their body just tightens up and they don't want to do it.
Yep.
So I get better adherence. But I find by doing that regularly, and we talked about this before, not every day, doing it every other day or every third day is a lot better. I find, and I know you do too, is a lot better than trying to just beat at it every day.
So talking through a couple, just to take another approach on that. One of the things that particularly the lateral leg release, right? Whether it's IT band or lateral, however you want to think about that, because there's a lot of tissues there that are
Yeah.
all at play. I'm going to take you back and take myself back to the section that I did in Scotland, actually in Dundee, Scotland, and I was dissecting a femur, or really a whole thigh of a cadaver. And what was really interesting to me was looking at the fascia that surrounds the entire thigh and how that just changes texture, if you will, or thickness. So you look at the side,
Mm,
it's this thicker band of tissue where that IT band comes down. You can see it. It's a little bit thicker and it comes down around to that, that side of the tibia and really branches out even onto the fibula there. And then you look at how that's really continuous with a thinner layer of fascia that covers the entire quadricep.
mhm.
And it actually then also dives down as the intermuscular septum between the quadricep, the lateral quadricep, and the hamstring, and the
Right.
lateral hamstring. So when you're doing, and it was just interesting to see how continuous all that is. It's not separate structures. So when I'm rolling, just like Brian said, I'm thinking about multiple things. I'm thinking about getting that IT band just to be a little less sticky, if you will, right? To have a little more pliability, a little more circulation, a little more lubrication. I'm thinking about the vastus lateralis, so that lateral quadricep also having glide both relative to the, it's getting complicated, sorry guys, both relative to the intermuscular septum and the hamstrings, but also to the other parts of the quadriceps. Remember, the quadriceps are four muscles, which do need to have some independence.
Mhm.
They shouldn't all be working as a clump, which I think they sometimes do. So that's where like rolling all the way from the side of the leg and going towards the top of the leg, to Brian's point, going from 12 o'clock over to 3 o'clock and really getting all of those pieces, I think is really critical. Okay, that was a lot to say there, but you get my drift. The other thing is when I bring up the topic of rolling out the lateral leg, I get so many strong opinions. And what's interesting
Yeah.
is as I get everything from, well, why are you doing that? It's useless. You can't change that anyway, to, oh, you're going to damage the IT band. Like,
Mhm.
those are two contradictory reasons not to do it. And to Brian's point too, when it's appropriate, when it's targeted. Like, this has been one of the absolutely most useful things
Uh-huh.
that I have done in terms of relieving knee pain.
Yeah.
You know? So that's the other thing. It's like, okay, well, I'm not gonna do it all the time. I'm not gonna be crazy about it. But I know that if I can get that to release and I can get a little more strength into that vastus medialis, reducing that reciprocal inhibition of that lateral leg to keep that VMO from firing, then knee pain goes away. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
keep using that tool because it works.
Yep. Yep. And something to think about. And this goes into the whole thing that when I first learned how to do foam rolling of the IT band, basically it was like ironing your pants. You just went up and down and up and down and up and down. Okay. Which didn't do a whole lot. Uh, in comparison to being more targeted as, holding certain spots, working in smaller sections, that sort of thing. I always find that to be a little bit better. But I remember distinctly, I was in Seattle teaching and I had a class of it was a gigantic class, well over 100, 150 people. And one of the foam roller companies, you know which one I'm talking about, the bright orange ones, gave them away to all the people and everybody had them. And while we were waiting, they were all rolling. And I'm standing up in front of everybody watching this. And during the class, I said, just a show of hands. How many of you release your IT bands regularly, like 3 to 4, 5 times a week? And every hand goes up in the air. I said,
Mm.
wow. I said, and how many of you have been doing this for, a couple years now? Every hand goes up in the air. I said, shouldn't it be released? And you could just see their eyes just get big. And I said, if it's not released now, what are you doing? So to me, it was changing the mindset of just doing it because I'm supposed to do it, because I've
Yes.
been told to do it,
Yes.
to here's my reasoning. I'm going to
Yep.
do it because I've got knee pain, because I've got lateral tracking issues, or because I still find there's a lot of adhesions or a lot of sticky spots, you
Mhm.
know, but I'm going to do it every other day. And then when things are calmed down, maybe once a week,
Mhm.
then maybe once every 2 weeks, a little preventative maintenance. To me, it's like oiling your bike chain. You got to do, you're taking care of things for the future. But for me now, once a month, once every 3 weeks is all I need personally to keep my knees happy. And even that I don't spend that much time on. It's just preventative maintenance. And when my knee gets cranky, then it's like, okay, yeah, I haven't done that in a little while. And I start doing it for a little bit. I get regular and things clear up. So again, be targeted with your
Yeah.
rolling. Don't just do it because, I've been told to do it every day. Be a little bit more targeted as to reason why.
Really, really well said, Brian. Again, this is just trying to critically think about what you're doing and why, and
Yeah.
and again, target things. One thing that now fascia science is still in its infancy, so a lot of this
We're
research
still
is very
learning.
premature. So take this as that. But one of the things that we saw, and that there's some research to support, is one of the things that happens when you roll on something, whatever it is, wherever it is in the body, is you actually push some of the water out of the tissues.
Yeah.
And there was one study that really showed that the tissue doesn't fully recover from that for at least 36 hours. Which I thought was kind of wild, because you kind of think like it's a sponge. I'm going to squeeze it and then I'm going to release it. But apparently, at least according to this one study, that's not what happens. It really does kind of push things out, and takes a while for that tissue to rehydrate and find its balance again. And so, one critical thing about that is exactly what Brian said. Every day is not actually a good idea. You're actually creating more stress in the tissues than not. So that's where I think, 3 times a week, every other day, when you need it, right? And again, you'll know you need it because you roll on that roller. It's like, right? You find all those sticky spots.
Yep.
The other thing that I'll also say is for my clients, it's not an issue of over compliance. It's often under compliance.
Yeah.
So the once a week, I've also found, does almost nothing. Like, it just means it hurts just as much every time,
Every time.
right? So like what I often say is just try, at least 2, maybe 3 times a week or every other day for a couple of weeks. And ideally,
Yeah.
if you do that, that feeling of like gitchiness and pain should go down each time. When it gets to the point where it's kind of like, it's sensitive, but it's not super sensitive. That's oftentimes for me a sign that you've reached the best situation you can be. And that's where you go into maintenance mode. Maybe
Yep.
at that point it is once a week. Maybe it's every 2 weeks. Maybe it's every 3 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's just, again, another way to think about that, or to reiterate and to amplify what you just talked about.
So those are things to do for knee tracking issues. Now, we also mentioned patellofemoral syndrome and chondromalacia. Okay. Because those are two things that you're going to hear. People are going to come to you. And again, it might be part of their story. I'm thinking of one of my clients who he's had many, many, many knee problems, and he is patellofemoral syndrome. That's his mindset. Okay.
Yes.
And okay, that's where he lives, and that's okay. But I thought let's discuss that a little bit
Mhm.
because they're often used interchangeably, those two
Yeah.
terms,
Yeah.
and they're not.
No.
They're really not. And so I thought, let's talk about that, in the last little bit that we have here as to what they are, what's going on, because one has more to do muscularly, one has more to do with arthritic changes,
Yeah.
and what we can do to help these clients, if there's anything we can do.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. So go ahead.
So
Oh,
I'm gonna start with chondromalacia.
that's what I was going to say. Let's start with Chondromalasia.
Yeah. So chondro, bone, Malaysia, like bad bone, kind of, is, I think, or bad joint, whatever that means. So the example that I have here, and I've seen this a bunch of times now, actually, on a couple of different dissections that I've done, is this guy in Scotland who I was dissecting was 100 years old, apparently. So an old guy, old Scottish guy. And when I took off his patella and I looked at the back of the patella and I looked at the groove in the end of the femur, the back of his patella looked like corduroy, in that
Mhm.
there was all these grooves and channels that were dug in the back of the patella, and they had matching grooves on the femur, on the groove that patella was sliding in. And that is chondromalacia patella. That is arthritic changes in the
Yes.
bone, that then, were caused by presumably some injury that then caused the bone to change shape. And then basically both the bones, both the femur and the patella, responded to that extra bone growth by creating this wild interconnecting kind of railroad track that patella was sliding on. So
Yeah.
that's chondromalacia patella. That's when you
Yep.
really literally have typically an osteophyte or a bump or some bone growth on the back of the patella that then causes a groove, a corresponding groove in the femur.
Or just someone who's lacking that cartilage anymore, so they're bone on
Yeah,
bone between
yeah,
their, patella and the condyle. So
yeah,
you could have that worn out so that's what you're feeling as well. Not
yes,
only bone growth and osteophyte, but also just lack of cartilage. So now
right,
you're getting that chondral bone pain, the chondral
yep,
nerve pain every
yep,
time you use it.
right,
And if you're talking about that, there's not a lot that can be done short of surgery for us. I mean, that's beyond our scope of practice. We can work on muscular balance of the thigh. Uh, Someone who's related to you through marriage. I'm thinking about when I
yes,
worked with her. She came
yes,
to me. Hers was really bad. And it took us probably 6 months, but we got it pretty pain-free and mostly noise-free. When I say
mhm,
noise, everybody knows those knee mice when you yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but when you create some more muscular balance and it's not so quadricep based, something to think about. Your patella sits inside of your quadriceps tendon, okay, your
mhm,
patella tendon. As you tighten up your quadricep, it's going to push that patella deeper into the femoral condyle. It's going to push it into the joint.
yeah,
So if all you're doing is working that quadricep over and over and over again, you're actually could be making it worse by pushing that and closing that joint closer and closer together.
yep,
Whereas working the hamstring and the glutes and the posterior chain can actually create a little bit more muscular balance within the knee and
yep.
give that a little bit of relief.
And releasing like we talked, releasing the quadriceps. So
Yep.
not just rolling the lateral leg, but rolling through the quadriceps too, because when that gets too tight, that will definitely pull that patella in.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that can sort of go on into patellofemoral syndrome, where it's more of that knee tracking issue we see, where it's more of that lateral tracking,
Yeah.
but they still have an overly tightened quadricep pushing and closing up that patellofemoral joint where the
Yep.
patella sits into the femur, pushing that in, creating additional pain. Because normally, I don't know about you, but almost everybody with PFS, and that's the shortened vernacular, PFS is that tightness in the quad and that pain usually just below the kneecap, just below the patella,
Yep.
where the tendon sort of inserts into, the tibia.
Yep.
And that's classic, that's where they're going to feel that muscle pain. And usually their quads are wool mama tight.
Wool mama tight, exactly. One other thing that I look at as, for wool mama tight quadriceps is Brian started with this, but just to bring it back up again, if your leg is straight, your patella shouldn't move when your knee is bent. Okay, so if your
Right.
knee's bent, you're trying to move your patella, it should not be moving. But when the leg is fully straight and the quads are relaxed, and you kind of push your patella around, it may freak you out a little bit, but it should have some mobility.
Should
Right,
move. Yeah.
it should like wiggle around in there. If it doesn't, and I've had a number of clients who don't, that lets me know how tight that quadricep is, especially if I'm kind of massaging their quad and it's like the quadricep isn't really contracted. It's just that is really pulled down. So that
Yep.
lets me know that the quadricep are just super, super tight. And I've got to get that to release and to relax a bit and other muscles to take up some of that load
Mhm.
of knee flexion extension.
And it can be difficult for people to stretch. When it gets to that point of
Yeah.
being that tight,
Yeah.
I
Stretching
always
hurts.
find the stretching hurts, but
Yeah,
also they may not be able to grab their foot behind their back, behind their body,
absolutely. No.
because their knee doesn't wanna bend beyond 90 very
Right.
easily.
Yep,
Can
yep,
it?
yep.
Yes. But also doing something like kneeling on it and sitting back on your heels is so painful, they don't wanna
Yeah.
do that.
Yep.
So, believe it or not, in my studio, and I'm sure in yours, the best thing that I ever found to stretch this out is the ladder barrel.
Yep, exactly.
Oh my gosh, just
Yep.
to put your foot up there. Now, I've used other things. I've used a couch. I've
I
used,
use
the back of a
chairs. I
couch, chair,
exactly. Yep,
whatever
yep,
you got, whatever you
yep.
can put your foot on. But the ladder barrel just happens to have that curvature to it that
Mhm.
relaxes through the ankle, that the foot can relax. It's not up against hard wood, which can be a little uncomfortable. Because I've used the wall ladder and things, and it can be a little uncomfortable even if you use a towel there. But the ladder barrel, oh my gosh, every client with PFS that I put on that, they all will stand there and say, okay, go away. I'll just stay here for a while.
The other thing too about the ladder barrel is they can be pushed up against the ladder.
Yeah.
Right, so they kinda have a front to be and they can hold on to the ladder, and then that leg it's no way I mean, it may not even be at 90, it's gonna be,
Yeah.
like, wherever it needs to be, and then they can just hang out there, and they can very gently, like, move into the stretch and move out of the stretch, or just hold it. Like, that may
Yep.
be a good static stretch for them, but they can also just gently move back and forward, to get that little extra dynamic quality.
Yep. So just if you're working with a client, it's very easy for us to stretch someone out, but it can be challenging for them to stretch it out on themselves.
Yeah.
So I do find finding a shelf, finding a countertop, finding a
Mhm.
chair, the back of a
Mhm.
sofa or the arm of a sofa, depending on the height of the person, because everybody's height is different.
Yep.
Finding that spot where they can put their foot up there and then relax.
Yep.
To me, that's the key. If you're holding on to it and you're trying to bring your heel to your butt, you're not really relaxing into it unless you can consciously tell yourself to, and your clients may not be able to, they may not have that ability.
Mm-mm. Absolutely. Yeah.
So getting them to relax in that position is so, so important,
Yeah.
I find.
Absolutely. And that's something that I try to give somebody to do every day if that's really their issue. If
Yep.
it's just tightness there, they've got a stretching, unlike release work. If somebody's that tight, I want them to do some version of stretching every day. And you're right,
Every day.
these are not going to be able to pull their heel to their butt. It's not going to happen.
No, especially lying on their stomach. I find the
Oh
best
yeah.
stretch for the quadricep is to have them lying in a prone position, bring their heel to their butt, because that knee doesn't go forward. Their hip flexor doesn't shorten. So it gives them a better stretch. But like we said, they can't bend it to
Not an
90
option.
degrees. They can't reach it.
Not an option. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've seen so many people say, well, you take a rope and you hook it through your foot and you pull. I'm sorry. That's way too much. It can be
Yeah.
done, but it's not easy. And our
It's
clients are
not
not going to
easy.
do it.
No, and it's like you're kind of reaching back behind you, and it's awkward. No, I think that, the ladder barrel, or again, the arm of if you have a nice rounded padded arm of a sofa that's the right height, that also
Works
can be a
great.
great thing at home. I've used dining room chairs with a cushion
Mhm.
on them or a big towel on them. Yeah, whatever works there. And it is just kind of like, okay, find the position where you feel a little bit of a stretch, and then just relax into that. And then maybe like playing gently with I call it, posteriorly tilting the pelvis, because that'll get a
Yes.
little bit of a stretch through there, or very gently pressing down into the shin, pressing the chin onto something, so you're getting a little bit of a contract release kind of thing happening there.
Yep.
So all those are really nice ways to get a little extra oomph on that.
Yeah. And those are the keys I find when people have patellofemoral syndrome, because you need to get that quadricep. Yes, I also want to strengthen the heck out of their hamstrings. I
Yeah,
mean, and I would strengthen what I consider the lower hamstrings, more of knee flexion rather
yeah,
than
and
hip
hip
extension,
extension. Yep.
because I really want to pull that tibia backwards a little bit, just to, again, open that space up. And when we say open the space, we are literally talking millimeters. We're not talking 2 inches.
No,
We're
no.
talking a millimeter of space, just to give it a little bit of what I say breathing room.
Yep.
Just a little bit of room in there can make all the difference in the world.
And I'm going to bring up one little thing, which isn't so critical here, and we'll go into this at some other point. But the other thing too is balance between the medial and the lateral hamstrings.
Yeah.
Right. So one other thing that I think about, especially with PFS, is the lateral hamstring and the medial hamstring will also track the tibia on the femur. So the lateral hamstring will tend to track the tibia laterally, so slightly laterally rotate on the femur. The medial hamstring will track it slightly medially on the tibia. I mean, on the femur. And if there's not a lot of balance there, so let's say you have patellofemoral syndrome and you have a tight lateral hamstring, and let's say when somebody is standing, their tibia slightly laterally rotated, right? So you're standing and like your
Yep.
kneecaps are pointing straight ahead, but your foot is slightly rotated out. Your tibia is slightly laterally rotated. That speaks to a dominance on that whole lateral side of the leg, and from hamstring through IT band through lateral quad. And a lot of times I need to balance that by getting some of the medial hamstring going to try to bring
Mhm.
that tibia into a little better alignment, because that also means that stress that you were talking about on the patellar tendon, right? Or with PFS, just that tracking of that patella is
Yep.
going to change a little bit, also related to where that tibia is. So just a
Yes.
little extra piece on there.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And people tend to forget about that. Let's face it.
Yeah, it's an obscure side bit in a way for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. So, anything else we want to cover for knee tracking, chondro, or PFS? I think we've covered a lot. We put a lot in here today.
I think once again we've gone a deep dive, a lot of tips and tricks here in terms of how to work with that, things to think about. If this isn't working, try that. If that isn't working,
Yep.
try that. Like lots of options there. So no, I think we're good.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Well, again, thank you guys very much for joining us this week. I hope you learned a lot about knee discomfort, knee tracking, uh, knee pain in general over the last 4. Actually, it's been 5, because we snuck Nico in between a couple of our knee segments.
We did.
But, we wanted to give you guys a really deep dive into all aspects of the knee. So hopefully you learned a lot. If you have any questions, comments, you can always reach out to us, movingcombos@gmail.com. Again, hit the like, hit the subscribe button on the podcast. That way it's in your feed each week. Check out the YouTube channel. That way you can see us live. Also, on Instagram, we are posting a lot more now, and our anatomies and our live versions of us have been doing fantastic. People seem to really like seeing some of the exercises and like seeing us being a little goofy sometimes and playing around. So it's been fun. So yeah, join us on Instagram as well at Moving Combos. And for Nora St. John, I'm Brian Ritchie. We will see y'all next week.
Thanks, guys.